Hi everyone. I'm obviously filming in a spot which I have never filmed any videos in before, just trying out a couple of different spots here and there. And this is going to be reviewing a book which I mentioned in a negative light on my most recent video, Now I'll Tell You Everything by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. This is the book which closed out the Alice series. You must be, living under a rock if you've never heard of her, like very, very famous, popular, frequently unfairly, challenged and banned and stuff series. Alice, it has, I believe, 28 books, and that includes 3 prequels, which she later wrote at some point during the series. She wrote the prequels before she brought out the final book. I don't remember how far into it, but it was, I know, pretty far into the series, and they were like Alice is a preteen, like 7, 8, 9 years old, thereabouts. I haven't read the entire Alice series, but I do at some point intend to, go back through and read all of them. And I was really disappointed at the final book in the series. I titled the blog post, this video is based off of, how not to write a series finale. I published it on the 14th of September, 2020. And just, a heads up, there are a number of major spoilers in this. So if you haven't read the book yet and you are thinking about reading it at some point in the future, I have over 300 other videos for you guys to check out, as well as a bunch of cat shorts. Now let's just start going through, well, not everything wrong with this book, but just the most major things I could think of when I was reviewing this, because if I went through every single thing wrong with this book, the blog post would be thousands of words long and the video might be, creeping up onto an hour. The 28th and final book of a long-running, much-loved series could be an unforgettable, epic tearjerker, or it could bite off far more than it can chew and leave a bitter aftertaste. Unfortunately, the latter is true with this book. Many readers feel the last few books were running out of steam anyway, but the finale takes it to a whole new level, and that's, putting it mildly. This book fell far short of the mark in so many ways. Number 1, talk about an unrealistic life of upper middle class privilege. Seriously. How many readers can relate to people who regularly vacation abroad, are able to take 6 years off work to stay home with the kids before coming back to that same job full time, or presumably with the same salary and schedule and benefits and stuff, get their first and only job fresh out of college? In this day and age, in this economy, it's not the 50s anymore. That's so unrealistic and kind of a slap in the face to almost all of us who have had the exact opposite kind of luck looking for work since we have graduated. We have not immediately jumped right into, careers lasting 20 years. It's much harder to find a job these days, let alone an actual career. Spend 2 years living in Barcelona. We can dream, can't we? Or buy their own dream house after leaving an apartment. And it's not just any house, it's a nice old Victorian former mansion, I guess. I would love to live in an old Victorian house someday. My favorite style of architecture is a Queen Anne revival, the one that looks like the haunted house with all the turrets, the asymmetrical facade, the towers, and it looks like a castle haunted house. And my second favorite is Tudor revival with the half timbering that was particularly popular in the first third or so of the 20th century. But I'm realistic. I still don't have a house like that, maybe someday, but again, so many things about this book are just totally unrealistic, and it's a slap in the face to how the other half lives. And I do know much of fiction, even so-called realistic fiction, it's a little bit of fantasy involved. You can live vicariously through the characters. Oh, that's so nice. They're accepted to fill in the school of your name, the school you would have loved to go to, or if you're still in high school, whatever you dream of going to someday. Oh, and you get to live in name the city you would love to live in, or the neighborhood in that city, or the type of house. Yeah, but at least that can be done realistically, not oh, I immediately went to the Queen Anne revival house after I got my dream career. You have to at least go through a little bit of struggling and stuff before it feels realistic, instead of just merrily sailing from one storybook chapter to the other, which this book just feels like, and it's totally not realistic. I can't say enough about how just I hated this aspect of the book. Number 2, there are no real struggles, which leads to a lack of conflict. Who would have guessed that? The few roadblocks are resolved quickly and never spoken of again. For example, a broken engagement, attempted rape. How do you just brush that under the rug? Breast cancer. Oh, what a miracle. It's caught so early. Alice gets treated. She's totally cancer free. Let's never speak of it again. Problems with a rebellious teen. Miscarriage. Oh, she never has. This isn't Alice. This is her buddy Elizabeth. Oh, she has some problems. But then she goes on to have 3 lovely daughters who all have like very typically, don't mean to stereotype, but like boomer type names. I'm not just like singling out those particular names or saying those names or any of the names in the book that are older, like vintage, are like inherently bad, but it's just almost none of the names in any of these books throughout the series, they're just not particularly like believable on people who would have been like born in those actual eras. They just seem more like names that were more common and popular when the author was coming up. And I should do a whole video, if I haven't already, about the right kind. I don't want to say like there's one right and one wrong way to like choose names for characters, but it's just you just don't want to like have all top 100 names, because that's going to quickly date the book. Or on the flip side, I like obscure, unusual, less popular, under the radar names, so I'm just going to give my characters really obscure names too. Most real life friends and like families, they have a mix of names. It's not just all names that were popular back in the 40s and the 50s. It's just like she was totally like lost about popular names. I know I'm getting totally off topic, but anyway, like after Elizabeth had some miscarriage issues, she went on to have 3 daughters with very, very like unusual for the alleged era names. Number 3, when the time capsule is opened in the final chapter, Alice's former classmates, now age 60, speak about how their lives haven't always been easy, with things like divorce, health crises, and losing jobs. That sure as hell didn't happen to Alice and her BFFs. The book would have been so much more like dramatic and compelling and interesting if Alice actually had faced any challenges that lasted more than like a few pages or a chapter or whatever. Number 4, is there a word for a reverse floating timeline where characters age normally as time alternately stands still and passes faster than they're aging? I mean, what is that? That's just like kind of like weird. I don't even understand how that's even supposed to make sense. The first book was published in 1985, and the finale was 2013. A 6th grader of 1985 would not be texting and using Facebook when heading off to college 6 years later. The time capsule, which is like totally contradictory, also has a newspaper with headlines about, wait for it, the USSR. Seriously. Make up your mind about when this series is supposed to be set. That's just like totally all over the place. And as I was just like rambling about, number 5, the opposite onomastic error of gut loading your book with current top 100 names, as the late editor Olga Lidowinski highly stressed, suggested, like basically outright told writers to do in how to writing and how to write and publish books, or writing and publishing books for children in the 1990s. She told you, use all the names your friends are naming their kids and kids now have, because I'm presuming you have to write contemporary. Who writes icky historical or any other genres? Just like name them, like Ashley, Nicole, like Jessica, like Justin, all the popular names who would have been like the children back in the 90s would have had. And that the opposite extreme of all 100 names, which quickly dates a book, is gut loading it with dated names. Sure, we've probably all known a few young people with names that were most popular in previous generations. For example, at the Albany JCC back home, there was the teen swim team was frequently changing in the locker room when I was there, and one of the teen girls was named like Barbara. She actually went by like BJ. I know that's kind of like weird on multiple levels, but people do not there are people who have names we most associate with other generations, even though it's, most people have more of like common contemporary names. I guess you don't really find many, like, I'm not insulting anyone again with these names, or anyone who's named children, who has loved ones with these names, or use these names for like characters or pets or beloved like stuffed animals or dolls, but it's just a neutral observation. You generally don't tend to find many girls under the age of, let's say, like, 20 or 30 named like, Barbara or like Debbie or like Linda or Suzanne or anything like that. They're just more associated with an older generation. And the author is, she's just like, everyone has a name you would be more likely to find back in the 40s or the 1950s. Number 6. How many people nowadays marry at all of 23, which many of the characters do in this book? Yes, I think the pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction from the 1950s, with all these people, like, they don't even think about marriage immediately. Oh, let's date for like 5-10 years. Let's just live together for another 5-10 years. Maybe we'll have a couple of kids along the way, and we'll just get married, almost as an afterthought. I mean, I know that's kind of like a stereotype. Not everyone just like, shacks up and indefinitely dates for like 15 years and has like a couple of children without being married first. But it's just like the opposite extreme is in this book. Oh, let's just get serious when we're in like junior high or high school, and we've got to get married as soon as we're out of college, or almost as soon as we're out of college. I mean, seriously, that's just totally not realistic. And even though the pendulum, I think, is swung way too far in the other direction, that doesn't mean you can ignore trends when writing contemporary. Number 7, the pacing is really off kilter. Many times, a couple of years fly by within the span of a paragraph or a single sentence later. Number 80, another pet peeve, like weirdness. Does anyone under 80, if that, still seriously, not in like a joking, like funny, satirical, whatever way, still refer to women as Mrs. Husband's full name? Gross. Nails on a chalkboard every time I saw that archaic convention in print. Like, who is still like doing that? Like the 1950s call, they want their like passively like writing women out of existence convention back. Sorry, not sorry. And again, for a contemporary story, how could there not be at least one woman who keeps her birth surname or hyphenates? Like, even the lesbian couple shared a surname. Like, what is going on? Number 9, a lot of events which took up an entire chapter or long scene in great detail had no relevance to the overall story arc, as it were. Like, for example, Alice's son Tyler having trouble with a urine sample, a one-day temp job at a construction site, and several vacations. Meanwhile, things like the 2 years in Barcelona were rushed through in a few pages. I would have enjoyed reading a couple of chapters about that, staying in Barcelona. Number 10, is this intended for teens or adults? Alice's college years are a natural subject for YA, and until like, I guess maybe like 10 or so years ago, they also would have been in the up and coming, it seemed, age classification, new adult, which I have done at least one prior video about, talking about the decline in new adult agents, and editors just don't want to rep it anymore. People aren't interested because it had great potential for the first few years, but it just seemed to have, unfortunately, I don't want to say like devolved, because that would be insulting the genre it came out as the most popular with, but it did turn out to be, most of it was like contemporary like romances. Nothing wrong with romance, but like for an actual, like, if you want it to be like a robust, popular, well-known, getting traction, people are shouting it out and like making it more and more popular and stuff, you want it to have more than just the one genre, like historical, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. But you guys can go check out my video prior about the new adult age classification. And so anyway, besides the college years, which most young adult readers would probably love to read about, how many teens will connect to her worries about, for example, raising kids, caring for an aging in-law, and juggling family and work? Number 11, it's kind of confusing, to say the least, to have a dad and daughter named Patrick and Patricia. bad enough when people do that to twins. I mean, at least I could kind of give couples a pass in the pre-sonogram era when, oh, surprise, there's another baby being born. Oh, let's just go with the female or the male version of the name we already picked out, or a name that sounds very similar, or a rhyming name, because we can't be ours to spend even a few days thinking up a whole brand new name for the, the second or the third baby who came by surprise. Why couldn't Alice name her daughter Marie after her mom? Instead of using that as the middle name, seriously? Marie is the most overused female middle name in living memory. And then obviously number 2 would be Anne, and Grace and Rose. I mean, a lot of people, that's a whole topic for a whole other video and blog post, but a lot of people, it just seems like they don't really put a lot of thought into girls' middle names. They're just more quick, easy to think of, thoughtless space fillers, because they just don't think the girls' names are as serious or important as men's names, and they have the sexist expectation, oh, she'll just be changing her last name anyway if she gets married, and so her birth surname will become the new middle name, and now who cares about the middle name anyway? I'm so glad I actually have, an original middle name. So it would feel more special if Marie were her daughter's first name. Number 12. It feels like fan fiction. After the realistic, difficult issues Alice faces for much of the series, now she has a happy ever after with the guy she's liked since 6th grade and smooth sailing through the rest of life. Seriously. Number 13. Alice's college years are really underdeveloped. It would have been better to focus on them in a longer than normal book, and either have an epilogue summing up what happened after she married Patrick, or put her adult life into a second book where each chapter was a short story. And many other readers reviewing this book said much the same thing. That would have been really popular and well received. Just split it into 2 books. Obviously so much material to get through. Just the one for the college years, and then the rest of the adult life for people who wanted to go even further with Alice and just have a little short story, because what the author did give us, it wasn't really well developed enough to merit an entire book. I love episodic stories, but they have to be hung on some kind of plot trajectory and story structure, not just meandering aimlessly through the journey in life. You actually have to have serious storylines and plots and dramas and beginnings, and not just, oh, we had some problems with Patricia, but then they were ironed out quickly. Patrick's dad got sick when he was old, but we took care of him, and I had cancer, and it was quickly resolved, and we went on one vacation after the other, and then Elizabeth had some miscarriages, but it was quickly solved, and she had 3 lovely daughters, and everything was lovely and perfect. That's just not how you write a story, even when it's deliberately of a more, episodic nature. Number 14. Alice spends much of the series thinking about sex, one of the most common reasons people have, challenged or banned this book. Yet when she finally does it, not with Patrick, we get no window into her emotions. All that buildup for nothing, seriously. Number 15, poor character development. New people are thrown at us thick and fast during the college years and all blend together. Even Dave, the first guy she slept with and almost married. Even long-standing characters start to feel paper thin, and Dave, he just, I'm not saying he should have turned into a monster and abusive and stuff after Alice broke the engagement, but he just seems to take it way too much in stride. Find a backbone, dude. It's one of many things wrong with this book. I didn't want a nonstop series of tragedies and traumas, but some conflict and realism would have been nice. Who would have thought so? Maybe Alice could have married Dave, reconnected with Patrick years later, and realized she still had feelings for him. Perhaps Alice and Patrick could have cheated instead of merely contemplating it, as they later confessed to one another. Alice could have changed her mind about her career path. Elizabeth could have kept having miscarriages, and Alice volunteered to be an altruistic surrogate. I am against surrogacy now, which is a total 180 from what I used to believe. I had the wrong ideas about surrogacy. Now I realize it's extremely exploitative of poor women. Most women are not altruistic, like Phoebe on Friends, which many women of my generation had that sunny, happy idea of surrogacy. But anyway, that's just a whole off-topic thing for another, but at least in the book that would have been, you know, an interesting storyline injecting drama, like Alice, oh, Elizabeth, I'm so sorry, I'm heartbroken, I'm hurting along with you, let me offer to carry a baby for you. Like that would have at least injected a little bit of like tension, something different happening instead of, oh, it was resolved happily ever after yet again. Or another things you could have like put into the book instead of the boringness, postpartum depression for any of the female characters, stage 4 cancer. Maybe Alice didn't detect her breast cancer until it was almost too late and she has to go through like the full-on chemo. She practically dies. Again, so many things, like, and a lot of people who have read this whole series and been fans for decades have felt like these characters are personal friends because of, you know, how many years they spent reading and growing up along with them. Like so many of us have had so many much better ideas how you could have made this final book like that much more interesting, but unfortunately it ended up in a completely different direction. It just didn't have a lot of, you know, like real like tension or drama or compelling original storylines. It was just, oh, that was resolved quickly, happy ever after again, everything was happy, blah blah blah. Seriously, anything but this rushed snooze fest devoid of details. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, have you guys read this book? Have you read any of the other books? Are you familiar with the Alice series or any of the other books written by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor? Did you like agree with my negative review of the book? Did you also find like WTF things going on in the finale after going through so much of life with Alice? Are there any other like final books of a series that totally disappointed you? Just anything else related that comes to mind? And I will have a video out very soon. Again, I'm doing a lot of like editing stuff, so I haven't as much time for videos lately, but I'm trying to do like one video a week or so. So thank you guys again very much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.